I have a couple more things about data frames. This isn't so important when you're talking about creating your own vectors and then combining them to make a data frame. But this is more so if you already have an Excel file and you upload it into R and you want to name the columns different things. I've just made some example ones here. So I've got vector A, which is 4 numbers, vector B, which is 4 names, and vector C, which is 4 true-false values. I'm going to run all of these to put them into my values column over here. Then what I want to do is I'm going to combine it into a data frame. So just like before, we have data frame ABC. I run that, and then it shows up over here. So now if I look at horse data, as I've called it, and I run this, the columns are just named A, B, and C. But if I wanted to change that, say names, horse data, so the data frame that I'm using, and then I'll say combine, and then I'm going to make up names for the columns. So position, horses, and medal winner. So those are my columns names that I'm going to add in. And it's just going to apply this. Whatever order you put it in here, it's going to say, all right, the first name here is the first column, second name here is the second column, third is the third. So if I run this, then it's going to apply those names to each of the columns. So if I run it then, it'll show up, and instead of A, B, and C at the top, it's put in my own names. So that's how to change the column names. So now I'm just going to go over a couple useful functions, some stuff that I didn't go over before, but is going to be really useful. And I've used some examples from the data frames that we've created in the past. So if we want to know how long a vector is, so how many numbers or elements are in this vector, so we've got siblings here, we'll just say length of siblings, and it's going to say that there are 5 elements or numbers within there. So that's one useful function. The str function, or the structure function, tells you the structure of an object. So if I want to know the structure of cookie problems, which as you recall is the data frame we created, I'm going to run that. So the structure is it's a data frame, so it tells you what kind of data it is, and it's got 5 variables, 5 elements in each of 4 variables. And then it shows that we've got here the columns, so names, hungry siblings, cookies, and then what type of data is within those. So that gives you just general data about an object. The class function tells you what class or type of an object it is. So those are the types of data that we talked about earlier, which are numbers, integers, true, false values, etc. So if I say class of this vector that we made earlier performed and run that, it tells us that this is a logical vector. To give you another example, if we did class of names, that would give us character because it's a bunch of names. So that's the strings. So that's what that tells you. And what I find to be one of the most useful ones that you'll use all the time is the names function. So if we do names of cookie problems, so this is for data frames. It's when you want to find out the exact names of columns. This is really useful when you have a whole bunch of column names, or you need to find out exactly what the spelling of a certain column name is, because remember, R is case sensitive. So say I forgot whether siblings here was a capital S or a lowercase s. I could go here and run names cookie problems, and it would show that the column names are names, hungry, siblings, and cookies. And that's useful for checking what your columns are and exactly how to spell them. So if we think back to when we talked about matrices and how to combine different matrices, we could combine them both horizontally and vertically. So we could put them next to each other or on top of each other. You can do the same thing with individual data points like this. So normally if you just use the concatenate function, the C, it'll combine them as a row. But you can also say cbind, and that will specifically mean we're going to combine the object as a row, which will then show up like this in your console. But if we wanted to combine it as a column instead, all we have to do is say rbind, and if we run this, you can see it creates a vector as a column. So one last thing here, because I've done it, but I haven't really specifically described what I was doing. Whenever you name a data set or something, whenever you use that arrow, say here, I've combined all of these into the names of horse data, or a better example is up here, where I've combined these vectors into horse data, and I printed it up here. All you have to do when you have the name of something, if you just type the name and run that, it prints it in the console. And of course, you can also say view horse data and run that, and it makes this. Lastly, if you want a list, you can always look up here in this to see all of your data frames and your vectors. But if you want to print it into the console, all you have to do is do ls and run this, and it will list all of the elements that you have to work with. So this is everything that you've saved into a data frame or into a vector. So I've got this whole long list of things. In this lesson, we learned how to name and rename columns, and we went over some useful functions to do with data frames. The next lecture will stray a little bit from our path here and talk about packages and what they are and how to get them.